Knock, knock, knock. Good morning. Morning. Yeah, I'm going to ensure privacy. I'm going to ensure that the entire place is safe for you. And I'm sure. Do you need? Do you want to get you anything?
No.
Okay, my name is Nox Tunde, and I'm going to be conducting your baby's assessment this morning. Okay. All right. First of all, I'd like to begin with the general survey. Can you please tell me what is your birth history? Did you give birth to your baby through Virginia, or through C-section?
Virginia.
To Virginia. Oh, thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Right now, so I'm going to conduct the vital signs of the baby. Understand the first vital signs that I need to get the vital sign. You get the first vital signs we want to conduct on the baby is the respiration, and then when we have to do the respiration, it's very important for us to place our hand on the belly of the baby and then count the up and rise for a full minute. This is very important so that it's always very easy for us to do the respiration if the baby is in a calm state. Then after that, I'm going to get my stethoscopes and do the heart rate. Then when I do the heart rate, I have to put my stethoscopes, in between um, um, the nipples, to get the heart rate for a full seconds. Then after that, I have to get the temperature. When you have to get an infant temperature, the infant temperature really has to do under the arms. You have to get the temperature under the arms. So that's on the vital signs and for that. And also I need to get the weight, the length. Now for you to get the length of the baby, you have to measure from the head to the tip of the feet. You have to measure from the head to the tip of the feet. And that's how to get the length of the baby. And for us to get the weight of the baby we can always get the weight of the baby through a scale. Now, for us to get the head circumference, what it's very important for us to get the head circumference is to always ensure that we put our tape above the eyebrow. We put the tape above the eyebrow. That's how you can always get the hair circumference. And for us to get the chest circumference, you have to put the tape just on the line of the nipples across the body. So that's just the only way to get uh, the circumference of the baby. Now we have to get in order for us to get to know how the child cry. You can always know how the child cries, when the child actually actually is in need of something, and that's why we have to know how the child cries. And also for us to get the skins. Now there are some 5-6 items for us to consider if you have to assess the child's skin. Now for us to get assess the child's skin, the first thing is to check for the venice. Now the venice is just like a fatty oil, like a grease kind of oil that the baby has when the baby was newly given birth to. And the essence of that oil is to protect the baby's skin. That oil is called venice. It's called venice. And we also have the malia. The malia is like a little bump, over the nasal cavity here. It's always like a little bump, over the nasal cavity. Now we have the nalulugo. The nalulugo is like a growth at the back of the shoulder of the baby. This is like a little growth at the back of the baby. And we have the erythema. The erythema most times are just like acne. They are like acne, that comes with the baby skins, but fades away over time. Fades away over time. Then we have the Mongolia spot. Now the Mongolia spot in a dark skinned baby is comes like in form of a birthmark. Comes like in form of a birthmark, and in a white skin you find out it could come as a form of a blister, as a form of a bruise, But when you see such, there's a need for us to report it as a nurse. And we have the Peter kill, the Peter chill. The Peter chills, they are just like little kind of reddish kind of spot, in the face of the baby, and these tend to fade away over time. So so that is it for for that. And then we can now go over um, now to assess, uh, now the head. Now, when we want to assess the head, it's very important for us to understand something that there are the babies. The first thing to assess the head is that we have to ensure to see if the baby's head is round, the baby's head is free of bumps, and the baby's head is normal cephalic. That shows that it's actually free of bumps, and that's what we have to look into. And that is that. So that's what we have to see when we are trying to check the head. And most importantly, the next thing we have to check for when we are checking the head of a baby is to check for what we call the anterior fontanelle. Now, the anterior fontanelle is like a diamond. It's the diamond in shape, and what we try to see is what we try to assess there is try to see if there's a bulging. Is it bulging? If it bulges out? Now, if there's a bulging, signs on that, that shows that there is there are fluids, that have actually settled there, and we might have to when such happens, we might have to just report that to the provider. And we also have to check for sunken effect. That the sunken really has to that has to do with the adhesion effect. That shows when you have like a kind of a depression in the head of the baby. And just like I said, the anterior fontanelle really has to is comes in form of a diamond shape, and we have the posterior at the back of the head of the baby. Okay, so that is that for now, and we might just want to see another thing I want us to check also is to check for what we call the caput. Now, the caput comes in form of a generalized edema in the head of the baby. Forms in form of a generalized edema in the form of the baby, and we might have to check for that. And if there's any form of swollen head, we might have to just report that accordingly. And we have what we call the cephal hematural, hematurals. The cephal hematural is just like it's just like a kind of how would I call it? It's like a state. It's like a trauma, experienced by the baby, through via the birth canal. So those are the things we really have to watch out for the baby. Okay. Then now we go into the chest. Now, if we have to check for the chest of the baby, there are two things we have to really look into. We really have to look into. We have to check into the chest of the baby. Number one, we have to check into the appearance of the baby, the chest of the appearance of the baby. Now, does the baby's chest does it have any kind of a concave kind of shape? Is it barrel in nature? If it is not, that's fine. Then after doing that, we might have to really check what we call the apical rate. And just like the apical rate, baby's apical rate can also be checked via, just like I mentioned earlier, we can always check the apical rate through the two spots from the two nipples. That's how we check the apical rate. For the baby breath sound. Now, it's very important for us to know that babies, when they are newly given birth to, does not have breath sounds. Does not have breath sound when they are newly no, I mean they have breath sound, but their breath sound is always wet. So what I mean by wet is that you could see murmur, breath sound. You could see crackles. You understand? These are normal for them. These are normal for them because they are just needing, breath, and it could be as a result of trapped, liquids and stuff like that. So these are just very, very, important for them. So that's on the chest for them, on the chest for the little kids. Then having done the chest, there's a need for us to having done the head for them. There's a need for us to do the face. Now, when we do the face for a baby, you understand what we do, what we're actually looking at for a baby is that we're actually looking at if the eyes, the two eyes, if the two eyes and the nose are aligned, if the two eyes and the nose are aligned. And then we also go over to the eyes. Now, for us to check the eyes of the baby, we have to check for, number one, we have to check for the color of the baby. Now, most babies, when they are nearly given birth to, the color of the eyes is always gray. The color of the eye is always gray, and then over time it changes to blue, but it depends on, the genetics of the baby anyway. So the colors of the eye is always gray, and then we also want to check for pallor. Pallor, you understand, we want to check if the pubis, you understand, are equal and react to light, you understand. But at this time around, we don't tend to check for the accommodation because they are actually gone. Then we also want to check for what we call the strabismo. The strabismo, another name for that is just what we call the lazy eyes. We call that lazy eyes is because the babies are still growing. The babies, eye muscles are still growing. It's not strong enough, so that's why they have the eyes. And it's always very it's always very difficult for them to kind of move the eyes. So that's what we call strabismo. And there's one other thing we want to look into. You understand? We want to check for the conjunctiva. The essence of the conjunctiva is just for us to see if there's an infection. You understand? If there's an infection, that the baby, when the baby was coming out through the birth canal, there's an infection in the eye, so we want to check through the conjunctiva. And also we want to check for the hairs, So now what we check for the hairs is just to see if there's an alignment, if the ears are well formed, and if there's an alignment, if there's a good alignment, you understand, with the eyes. We want to check for the eyes. And we also want to check for the nose. Now what we check for the nose is just to see if there's patency in the nose. Just to see if there's patency in the nose, you understand. We go to the mouth. Now, one thing that we go to the mouth is to, you understand, the first thing we go to the mouth to check for is just to see how the child is sucking, how the child is swallowing. And we also check for what we call epistemic pulse. The epistemic pulse are just like a whitish calcium substance, that's deposited in the mouth of the baby. So we try to check that, you understand. But that goes away as the child, grows, as the child progresses, you understand. And also we want to check for the palate, you understand. So it's at this point in time that we have to put in our gloves, you understand, and then use the pinky finger, you understand, just to check the palate of the baby and see if there's any opening, and if there's any openings, and if the entire palate is intact. Now, having done that, now we can now go to the abdomen. You understand? Now, when we want to check the abdomen of the baby, just like I mentioned, you understand, we really have to check for, we really have to inspect, we have to inspect the entire abdomen and see if there's no bulging, and we also want to auscultate. Now, we want to auscultate the abdomen and see if there are variations in the shapes of the abdomen, and if there are, you understand. But when we talk about the abdominal sound, it's very important for us to note that children or infant doesn't have an abdomen sound at the beginning. They do not have any abdomen sound. You understand? We don't. That's when they do not have abdomen sound, and they get to have abdomen sound the moment they took their first, maybe they took their first feeding. That's when they can subsequently have an abdomen sound. You understand? And on that too, you also want to check how their elimination pattern. You want to check the elimination pattern. The elimination pattern we are talking about really has to do with their void. Now you want to check how they are voiding. You want to check how you understand the pee. This is when it's very important for nurses not to open their their briefs, or their pampers. You understand, and see if there's any pee in the pampers, things like that. And we also want to check, that's what we call the first bowel movement, called, is it Merculin, Merculin or so. The bowel movement is very, the first bowel movement a baby will, an infant will always have, is always thick, is always black, and it's always starry in nature. You understand? And it appears within 3 days. You understand? That shows, that's we want to also want to check that. And also when it comes to the genitals, now it's very important for us to check the genitals of the baby. The first thing we check the genitals of the baby is just to see that if we have the minor labia and the major labia, if they actually cover the clitoris. And for the male, we actually want to check if there's a meatus. You understand? Located in the form, you understand? Centrally, is the meatus located centrally in the penis, so that the child can urinate freely. And also we also want to check that, basically we just want to check also for we also want to check for the testes. Now, for a male testis, we want to check if the male testes have actually been distended. We want to check if there's a signs of rugae on you understand, on the scrotum. Now, what the rugae stands for is that the rugae, you understand, the rugaes, they are just like wrinkles on the scrotums. They are just like wrinkles on the scrotum that shows that the testes have been extended. So you also want to you also want to confirm that. You understand? And also, just like I mentioned, we also want to mention, we also want to consider what the voiding pattern as well. That's what, if the child pees or not. Now we want to go into the extremities now. When we have to talk about the extremities, we really want to talk about how the child, you understand, does it have an equal and bilateral movement in all extremities. We want to check the hands. We want to check the toes with the fingers. We want to check the toes. We want to check. We want to check the feet. Now, when you have to check the feet of an infant, what you have to look into, or what you have to look for, is to see if there's any evidence or any signs of clubbing. You understand? So we have to be very careful. And also on that again, we want to check. We want to check for. We want to check for what we call. We want to check for dislocation. You understand? That's the hip dislocation. We want to check if there's a clicking. You understand? If there's a clicking, dislocation or not. You understand? So that's what we check on the extremities for a baby. And also we want to go into checking of the back of the baby. We want to check the spines and the back of the baby. When we check the back of this baby, it's just for us to check for the what they call the vertebral column, and to see if there's an alignment in the vertebral column. Now, the essence why we have to do that is just to see if there's any sign of what we call spinal bifida. The spinal bifida really has to do with a defect in the in the spinal cord. Maybe there's an opening in the spinal cord of the baby. We want to check that. You understand? I want to also check the anus of the baby. Now, what we need to do at this point in time, we really have to put in our gloves and check for the muscles of the anus if there's contraction. So that is all for that. We also want to check for the reflexes now. Now, the reflexes that we are going to check for really has to, the first one we have to do with moral reflexes. Now, moral reflexes, that is when you have to carry the baby and you drop the baby, and what you see in return is like a kind of a statute movement, characterized by the spreading of the arms and the spreading of the entire of the two feet and 2 legs. You understand? So that's the moral. Then we have the tunic reflex. Now, the tunic reflex, what that does is that each time the baby turns the ears or head towards a side, the baby tends to extend his or her arm towards that side, and then the other arm is kind of bent towards it's kind of bent towards the side he or she is turning to. Okay, and the same thing happens. So that's what we call tunic reflex. Then we also have the palmar. Now the palmar, if you want to check the palmar reflex, you have to put your finger into the hands into the hands of the baby. Subconsciously the baby will squeeze your hand, finger. So that's how we check the palmar of the baby. We check the palmar of the baby. Then we also want to check the plantar of the baby. You know, where you have to put your feet, where you have to put your hand. You know, below the toes. The baby is going to squeeze. You know, it's going to squeeze. You understand? It's going to squeeze that. And we also want to check also um, for yeah, we want to, okay, you want to also want to check for the sucking and the swallowing. You understand? Now we get to see the sucking and the swallowing. We get to see the sucking and swallowing out the baby. You understand? Each time the baby is actually being fed by the mom, that's when we get to see, you know, the sucking and the swallowing. Then also for the stepping, you know, you might want to try to put the baby on the you know, standing up, and then, you know, the feet, you know, up, and then that, you understand, just to see how the baby is able to, you know, lift you know, the leg. And also we want to see the routine. Yeah, the routine. Yeah, when we call routine, what we mean by routine is really has to, that's when we have to see the survival instinct of the baby. Now what the baby does at that point in time is to, each time you try to put your hand on the cheek of the baby, you see the baby trying to, you know, stretch towards where your hand is. That really shows that the baby is responding very well to, you know, things that comes to the mouth. You know, I mean, you know, those are the things that reflect the oral stages, you know, of the baby, and that's really depicts also the survival instinct of the baby. Also, and also we have to check for the Babinski, you know, the Babinski, you understand, reflex of the child. Now, well, I would check the Babinski reflex of the child is just to stroke the feet of the baby. When you stroke the feet of the baby, what you have in return is to see the entire toes, you know, stretching out. So that's a positive Babinski. And so we also want to check for what we call that is a that's what we call intro. That is the trunk incubator. We call the trunk, I mean, gallant. Well, we call it gallant anyway. You understand? So what we do at that point in time is to stroke the back of the baby. When you stroke the back of the baby, what you see in return is to see. Now, when you stroke the left side, you see the baby responding via the left side, you know, buttocks here. Then when you stroke through the right hand side, you see the baby responding also to the right side buttocks. So that's how we say the gallant, you know. That's what I can remember as regards that. So we want now have to go into what we call the behavioral state. Now for the behavioral state, there's what we call the deep sleep and the quiet alert. Now it's very important for us to understand that the deep sleep, you understand, it's a nature, it's a state whereby, you know, it's always very difficult, you know, for us to arouse the child. You understand? Children in that deep state and what we call the deep state, the deep state sleep, and the quiet alert state. You understand? They are the same thing. What happens in that state when children sleep like that? So number one, their respiration is always very low. Number two, they tend to show a startled, you know, kind of movement, you know, at intervals. Then number three, you know, they tend, you know, their eyes is wide open when they are sleeping. You understand? Then number four, you tend to see them. They don't get, you know, aroused by, you know, the environmental, you know, noise, the noises that comes from the environment, or the stimulus or the stimuli that come, you know, the stimulus that comes from the environment. They are not moved, you know, but the eyes is open. You understand? That's in the deep and the alert, the quiet alert state. Then we also have what we have the active and the light state. The active and the light state sleep, those are the stages whereby the baby experience high rate of respirations. The baby, you know, tend to show discomfort, feelings of hungry. You know, the baby tends to have high respiration rate. You know, those are the states. Now, one thing about that state is that if the mom does not attend to that state of the baby, that's what leads to the intensive crying. The intensive crying state is the state whereby the baby will just burst into a cry and then, you know, try to show, you know, the mom that I've been calling for help. You are not coming to my head. I'm hungry. I'm showing some sign of discomfort. You're not coming to my head. So that's what we call the intensive the intensive crying state. And we and the last but not the least is the I think is the drowsy state. The drowsy state is the state whereby the baby will stay awake, sleep a little, stay awake, sleep a little, and wake up. So that is the little higher for the infant assessment. Thank you very much.